Hello, welcome back to my channel. I'm Ms. Zaineb and today we're going to be talking about the internet. So, how does the internet work? And what is 5G? The internet is one of my favourite topics to teach. It is so powerful and it is amazing that how much it has changed our lives over the past decade. So these are some of the apps that we obviously use. And the first one we'll talk about is WhatsApp. WhatsApp is the most addictive app ever. I even remove my last scene because it's embarrassing how much I'm on there. So like anyone can see me online constantly. And Instagram is another great platform to be able to share photos and videos. I love Instagram for motivational posts, inspirational posts. I think that's a great network of excellent speakers out there. Snapchat is another good one. Snapchat is excellent to be able to keep in touch with family, spam them with so many photos and videos so you don't use up their storage. That's the only thing that I use it for, to be honest. And of course, our banking. So apart from communication, we also use it to be able to just get through life. So even things like banking and Amazon. Amazon is definitely one of my favorite apps to use. I love it. It makes my life so much more easier. I don't even know what I've ordered half the time and it arrives and it's just like Eid a million times throughout the year. And then of course we have our normal communication. Now communication has evolved now and then we're using video calling a lot more often, especially over the recent months when we're going through the pandemic. It was a great way to keep in touch with people like that even live locally to you and of course family that live in other countries. So we know now what we use the internet for, and obviously this is something that we're using all the time. But how does it work? How do my photos, how do my videos get to other people's devices? How does information get from one place to another? So we've all heard of the term the cloud, and a lot of people, when you first ask them these questions about how the internet works, the first thing that they think about is information can travel through a cloud and then it kind of beams down. And the cloud itself isn't real. The cloud is a marketing term. It's not actually obviously a real cloud. So how does it actually work? How does information get from one place to another? It's actually just cables. That's all it is. It's just cables. Okay, have a look, I'll explain. So this map is a map of the world, and the world needs to be able to have internet coverage. So in order to do that, the best way to help countries communicate with each other is to provide a pathway. So for example, here I am in Dubai, and I have my family in the UK, we have friends in America, I don't really have friends in America, I have one, and another in Australia. Now, we all need to be able to communicate with each other. So we all need to find a way that our photos and videos can get to each other's devices. So in order to do that, cables need to be set up across those countries. And the cables are actually laid down under the sea. So this map here is really easy to get hold of. The map is available on the internet. This one was last updated this year, July 16th. And this is the whole cable network for the entire world. So these are all the cables that are laid down under the seabed. So these cables are strong and tough enough to be able to withstand most of the pressures of the sea. So you might at first notice that there are some areas of the world that actually don't have coverage. Now, the reason behind that, it's actually quite a sad reason, is that in order to lay the cables, it's very expensive to do so. In certain countries or certain parts of the country, there are not enough people that are able to pay for an internet service, so they can't pay an internet service provider. And therefore, due to the chain, the cables won't be laid down. So you can see in a lot of the other countries, there are a lot more cables around it because there are a lot more consumers. So there are a lot more people paying for an internet service. And this is where satellites can play a role here, which we'll get into in just a moment. So now, cables. What are the cables made of? Well, these are actually fiber optic cables. The one on the right, you can see, is the real version of the cable. The one on the left is just a diagram. For your GCSE, you don't need to memorize what each of the words are. But on the right, you can see how thin and small the cables are. The actual fiber optic cable, the smallest bit itself in the middle, that bit is actually made of glass. and it transports pulses of light. Now, if you remember back to when we were talking about binary in my last video, binary is on and off. 1 being on and 0 meaning off. So these pulses of light carry our data throughout the entire world through these cables. Really simple. Okay, so now getting back to satellites. Now, satellites, they do have their uses, but when you make a comparison between the two, cabling is actually the winner here. So satellites are less reliable and they're slower. Now, what I mean by it being slower is that the distance it takes between transferring data from your phone to a satellite is actually much longer than it would take than if it was traveling through a cable. But satellites aren't bad. Remember those poorer countries I was talking about earlier, and they might have very, very little cabling around. If any of those cables got damaged, then that would cause an internet outage for that country. Therefore, the country can then use satellites to be able to transfer any data or to be able to communicate with the rest of the world. Also, there are places that cabling can't even get to. So satellites are perfect for those situations so that people can still communicate with the outside world and still be able to use the internet. So what about inland? So if we're trying to communicate inland and we're trying to use cellular data, then you must have heard of 4G. Some countries are already using 5G, but what is 5G and why are people worried? Okay, so 5G works on a higher frequency wavelength. Do you see the difference between these two waves? Well, this means that we can pack in much more data per second. This means faster downloads, faster streams. Now, due to this higher frequency, this means that buildings can block the wave. So this means that we would need many more 5G towers to be able to cover a town. So whereas 4G doesn't have that problem, buildings don't block 4G. So therefore people are a little bit more worried about the effects of having a higher frequency wavelength and having these towers put in place. Thank you so much for watching and I hope you enjoyed it. Don't forget to subscribe for more.